Hi, my name is Josie Andersen, and in today's episode of Corona Diaries, brought to you by Anthro magazine, we wanted to address how high schoolers around the world are being affected by the pandemic. To do this, I interviewed three students from different locations around the world, such as Singapore, Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, and Newcastle in Australia. So, just to start off, tell me a little bit about your country's situation and what your government's response has been.
So the way Singapore works is they have like a panic number. So the number of cases when they'd start to panic and when things would start getting bad, and that was 50 because we'd been doing so well. We were having like 2, 3, like nothing, but people still freaked out. Like people stocked up on like everything, and well, like they didn't need to. So they did that for a while, and then when we realized that Singapore was actually doing all right, only having like I think the maximum cases for a while was about 35. Then they sort of stopped and things went back to normal. Then we hit 50 cases. Then the next day we hit 70, and then it just kept going up and up, and we ended up hitting like 400 within 3 days of hitting 50, and now we're at like 800 a day. The Singapore government, if anything, they were just a little bit late. They thought that they were so on top of it that they didn't do anything they didn't do anything to prevent it drastically. They just did, like little things like, oh, make sure you always sanitize your hands and temperature checks at a couple locations, but that was really it. Like, I think we've been getting temperature checked at school for like the whole year, pretty much. Like, I think there were only a couple weeks where we weren't. So things like that, they were on top of from the start. But then when cases started going up, they didn't have a plan until I think it was a bit too late.
Yeah, I think it's efficient because the cases are like reducing definitely. What they do is like at 10 p.m. you have to stay in your house. Like even if you went out for groceries that day, you have to stay in at 10 p.m. Because they're doing like a sterilization thing with like trucks and everything in the night, and they sterilize all the streets and all the stores and everything for the next day, obviously. So that's working, and they closed all of the ports, all the malls, everything's closed right now, except for like groceries for essentials, obviously, and the pharmacies are open. But they've started like delivering groceries, so you can order them online too. So that's like reducing going outside also. In Dubai, you need to apply for a permit if you want to go outside. Like it's like a 2-question thing. Like you put your license plate, your Emirates ID, and then the reason you're going out. I think once the form, like we submitted the form wrong and the time was wrong, so we got fined for staying out later than we wanted to. Like we put 2 p.m. instead of 3 p.m. and we got fined for that. It was like 5,000 dirham. I think it's for our safety and for like the nation's safety as well. So I think that's really important. And on YouTube, there was an ad, like it was in Arabic, like roughly translated. It was like a little girl saying, I stay inside my little home to keep my big home safe.
So each state has their own fine for having too many people together. I think the highest is like Victoria, like $11,000, and then it goes down to W.A. But each state changes, but there is fines in each state. Yeah. They've taken really good like safety precautions here, which is like really good to see because the whole community kind of came together and stayed at home. But that being said, there's also some people, like the beaches are always still really full and they don't really follow the social isolation things that they've put up. But the stores are like really strict with their like 1.5 meter rule and everything. So it's good to see that they're taking right safety precautions.
How exactly has the pandemic affected your academic life?
When we first found out that our school was going to close, we were actually one of the last schools to announce it, and we found out on Sunday night before our last week of term. So it was a bit of a shock, and then that last week was quite hectic because teachers weren't that prepared for it and like all that sort of stuff. For a lot of people, especially at the moment, Singapore is starting its storm season. So Wi-Fi keeps cutting out for everyone constantly. And that adds a bit of a distraction to classes. And
I go to boarding school in Switzerland called Beausoleil, and I've come back to Dubai just in the nick of time before all the borders and everything closed. So our online school is still in the same time zone as Switzerland. So for me, it's not that bad, but it starts at 10 in the morning and ends at 7 p.m. But for other people, I know that it's in the middle of the night or at like 3 a.m. And I think that's a bit crazy. Plus, like, I feel like the workload and homework has increased substantially, and it's a lot harder to keep up.
So my school closed down like 3 weeks ago, and we've been doing online since every single day. We only really found out by email because they weren't really sure up until like the last night as well. And they kept the little kids open so that the parents can still go to work, but everyone from like year 3 and up still did online school. And we've been doing that ever since. Last week, they made all of year 12 come back. And then next week, the year 11s are going to come back for 2 out of 5 days of the week. And then they're going to kind of ease into that by doing that for each year group. And then eventually we'll all get back to school as normal.
How has the pandemic affected your ability to communicate with your friends and family?
So people that are in Dubai, like, it's easy to Zoom with them because we're all in the same time zone. But coming from boarding school, and everyone is also in boarding school coming from all around the world, it's really hard to get a good time between the 2 people or 3 people. And like sometimes one person's talking at like 3 in the morning and then it's like lunchtime for you. And I think that's a bit tricky to get around because like maybe you're asleep and it's hard to keep in contact. Like me and my friend, she's 4 hours ahead. That's not too bad. But my friend is also in Mexico, and so it'll be like 4 a.m. for me and it'll be like 2 p.m. for her. I'm like, hey, let's talk.
I talk to my friends a lot more over it, which I usually don't because after school I kind of just do my homework and then self-isolate for the rest of the day. But now that we're at home, that's kind of increased a lot more, and I've definitely used it a lot more. Yeah.
Meeting up with people could happen by chance, but people are always watching and the police are around a lot. So you definitely have to watch the space between you and stuff like that. But no one is planning any meetups. Like with my friends, we're not planning to meet up, but I'm actually quite lucky because I still work. My job is still going on. So I see people there, and my best friend actually works there with me, and we've had a couple shifts together. But again, you got to keep your distance in the store with the customers. Everything's a lot more hectic and stressful now. So even when I am at work with my friend, it's not really time to catch up. It's stress, really.
How has your shopping behavior changed?
So most of the stores are closed, but the big retailers like Kmart, Target, Coles, Woolies, all of that is still open, but you have to stand in a line for quite a bit of time. They let in like one family at a time so that there's not too many people, and then it's all self-checkout, so you're not like talking to anyone at the cashier or anything. Yeah, they've taken the right safety precautions for it, and it's only the major retailers.
It's really weird. Like everywhere, when you enter the grocery store, there's a person that has to check your temperature, and if it's too high, then you have to go back, obviously. And all the precautions that are being taken, there's constantly people cleaning like each item on the shelf and things like that to curb the spread. And when you're leaving, there's a sign that says make sure to wash all your groceries, like not just your produce, like the packaging of everything. And there's signs everywhere saying stay 6 feet apart, and it just feels a bit ghostly, especially because it's even Ramadan right now. And usually people would be at the grocery store scavenging for like food and everything for iftar. But now there's like 20 people in one Spinneys at a time. So when I got back, it hadn't started yet. Like the lockdown and everything hadn't started. It was just like closing the borders to help keep all the cases inside and stop the spread around the world. And it was really weird because we went to the mall for something and I was like, where is everybody? Nobody was there. Like it's full, it's noisy, it's so loud, you can't even hear yourself think. I talked and you could hear an echo. It was like when I got there, Ski Dubai was closed, the ice rink was closed, everything was closed, and the cafeteria and everything, like all the major spots where a lot of people would be gathered, were closed. And on the signs, there were like, I think it was 200 people to a store, but there was only like 5 people in one store. So, and no one walking around. Usually there's like probably thousands of people just walking around. There was no one. There's literally no one.
So yeah, there's a lot of people considering what's going on. You'd expect everyone to be staying home, but because I work at a food store, right? So people come and they bulk buy and they try to stock up. So we get people paying for 10 kilos of flour at a time or a whole bunch of certain foods. So a lot of people queue because we can only get 2 people in the store at once, like 2 customers or 2 households, so like a parent and child or a couple. And people queue out the front, and because they have to keep a distance between them, they end up going on like just waiting to get into our store, which is kind of crazy considering what's going on and stuff. And because people have to wait, people can get impatient and get really rude, and yeah, it's not the best situation, but it's what we're stuck with. So
How has isolation affected your mental health?
The only thing I was really anxious about was falling behind in school for it. The staying home part didn't really stress me out too much. It's just that I wasn't getting the same kind of education that I would have at school, and that's kind of really crucial for year 11s and 12s. So that kind of, and I know that was a common fear for all of us. But other than that, I kind of knew that it would eventually get back to normal.
Well, I think I'm quite lucky as I have work that gets me out of the house. But it's quite stressful when I am at work because it's gloves and masks and you want to stay away from people because I don't want to be responsible for, if something does happen at work, for accidentally bringing anything home. The overall situation has been quite stressful, but when I'm at home, I feel safe, so I'm not really thinking about it. And because I can be in my room and I can be alone, or I can be downstairs with my family, and then I'm FaceTiming people a lot, that I don't feel like I'm alone, and the fact that everyone else is going through it as well, like everyone in other countries, then yeah, it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Okay, that does it for today's episode of Anthro's Corona Diaries. Make sure to check out our website at anthromagazine.org, which will be linked in the description box below. Thanks for watching.